All right, welcome back to the Casey Adams Show. Today, I am joined by Anthony Katz, the founder of Hyperice. Anthony, thank you so much for coming to the show today.
Thanks for coming in.
So if you're watching right now and you're not listening, you can see we have the Normatec boots on. This is something that I got to give a huge shout out to my producer Diego on. He says, why don't we do the show with the boots? We walked in here, Anthony, and your team suggested we could do it. So first off, thank you so much for having us here today at the HQ down in Irvine.
It's good to get the full experience when you come.
Yeah, man. So, I guess just to jump right off the bat, have you done an interview before in the Normatec boots?
Every day that I come in the office, I do Normatec for about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour every night, no matter what. Like the way I tell people is like, every day we take a shower and that washes the outside of your body, and the Normatec is like the shower for the inside of your body. So it's built into my routine. And I never miss a day. When I go on the road, I take it. And but when I'm in the office, I usually do it at night before I go to bed. But on the days I play basketball, usually I'll get in for about a half hour to 45 minutes when I come in the office, just to get like that extra pump in before the game.
Dude, yeah, it's so great to hear. I've used the Normatec boots a handful of times. I don't have a pair myself, but for people that may not know what Hyperice is, I know from the context of even speaking Normatec, this is a company you guys acquired a couple years back, correct?
2020, yeah.
2020. Take us back, man. We're here at this beautiful HQ, and the founding story. You were a high school teacher. What was it, in 2010, 2011?
Well, yeah, I was a basketball coach and a high school teacher from the time I was done with college, and so like call it like 04 to about 2008. Yeah.
Wow. So yeah, you guys have been at this for 15 years now.
Yeah, we the company technically was founded in 2010, but that was really more just I had like a working prototype and a name for the company, and sort of wanted to launch like the R&D to develop the first product. So I am torn between saying the company was founded in 2010, but we really kind of started in 2012 as a commercial, commercializing the product. But yeah, 2010 was like the kind of this, it really goes back to the summer of 2009 was sort of like the planting the seeds of it. But I don't have an exact date, but like, let's call it like, as early as summer of 2009, as late as 2012 when we commercialized. But that was sort of the range that, how long we've been at it. And, crazy to think it's like 14 years ago now.
No, yeah. Insane. It's absolutely insane. And before we really dive into the backstory, just to give context to the viewers and listeners, if they don't know, you guys are the go-to partner from a recovery standpoint for brands like the NBA, the NFL, PGA Tour, handful of other brands that I know I didn't mention here. Talk about where the company is today before we dive into the backstory of how we got here.
Yeah. So the one thing people always ask, like, oh, okay, so what is Hyperice? And people say, oh, you guys are a recovery brand. Well, what's recovery brand, or what's recovery technology? And so recovery has just become a catch-all term, and it implies in the literal definition of like, okay, well, like you do some sort of competition or training or workout, and then like your body needs to recover after. And it's sort of like a misnomer, because like that just indicates that like you would use the products for like the post, and that's just not really what our products are. Our products touch the individual like at all different like moments throughout the day in that sort of rhythm of training or competition or whatever. Like, so for the athlete, for example, an athlete will come and do like, before they even get to the arena or the court or the pitch, they're doing some like kind of stuff throughout the day to like kind of get their body like in sort of like the pre warm up. And then there's like the next phase, which is like, okay, they'll get to the arena and then they'll start doing some basic soft tissue or activation stuff. That's like the pre-warm up. And then like you have like your actual warm up, and sometimes our products will be using that, maybe like people wearing a Venom during that time.
Yeah.
Then you have like the competition, and our products are used during game when like players come out of the game. You'll see it like on the sidelines of NBA and NFL, like when guys come out of the game. And then, the post is like the recovery. So like directly after the game, potentially if someone is like trying to get ahead of it, they'll use product. And then you have the next day, which is sort of like the day after, which is sort of the body maintenance, which is like, hey, I might not even have a game. I'm not really recovering from the last one. I'm more just like, there's a cadence and a rhythm to like that the athletes work their routine into. And so Then there's a treatment phase, which is like if someone does have like an injury or is some ailment, they'll be able to use our product. So like it's the it's the recovery, it's the body maintenance, it's the treatment. So then there's like the travel, right? Like all athletes travel. Like right now the Olympics are about to start, and unless you were stationed in Paris, every athlete's going to go travel there. Well, like traveling disrupts a lot of the body's sort of rhythm and breaks routine. And so we have to make all our products portable. Like right now we're in the Normatec Elites. Last week I was in Vegas, every player on USA men's basketball got a set of Normatec Elites. They already, 8 of the 12 players already had one, but we gave them a specific pair for Paris because they were flying on the private plane from Vegas to Iceland and then to Abu Dhabi, and that's where they are now. And then Abu Dhabi is going to go to London. So they're going to be on these like really, really long flights. And so like giving them the ability to keep their body in peak condition, even battling sort of like the elements of travel. So to say that like we're a recovery brand, recovery just is like another word for just body care essentially. And so we need to make products that touch the athlete at all these different moments. And so that athletes can say like, hey, everything for my body, there's one brand I go to and they make everything I need.
That's incredible. And even to just like speaking on the Team USA, as you mentioned, so everyone got a pair of the boots we're wearing now.
Yeah. I mean, it's nothing new to the players. I mean, they're using this in their training. But what we would want to say is that, USA now Team USA is 12 players from, it's not exactly 12 different teams because there's actually 3 Celtics on the team. And so let's call it 8 different teams, right? Yeah. So those players all are coming in. They want to have the same rhythm and routine they have when they play for their teams. So we want to make sure that like Team USA has all the resources that they have that their NBA team would have. And so we support that because we're a partner of the NBA and a lot of the players are either friends or investors or whatever. So it was just something where like, hey, the travel is going to be pretty taxing and we want players' bodies in as best condition as possible.
Yeah.
So, but this is the 3rd Olympics that we've done something like that for. I remember when I first started in 2012, the year we launched, all we had was the ice compression devices. And I had a relationship, funny how things come full circle. I had a relationship with Nico Harrison, who's now the GM of the Dallas and president of the Dallas Mavericks. Back then he was executive for Nike basketball. And he knew a lot of the players were using the Hyperice really early on. He's like, hey, we should give a pair for every player on the team. So I went to Vegas in 2012. I remember the day we did some special USA basketball stickers. So when we had one product and we did that for Team USA 2012, they won the gold medal.
Oh man.
Then in 2016, we had more products at the time. We had the Viper, and we had the Hypersphere, and we had the ice compression. So we did all 3 products, and then Nike made the backpack. And so we did that for the Olympics in 2016. I remember presenting to the men's and women's team. And then 2020, you couldn't do anything because it was the Olympics. It was the COVID Olympics. And for this Olympics, it's the Nike shoe, which I'm sure we'll talk about later.
I was just about to get
in the vest. So it's a big full circle. This Olympics is a kind of a big full circle moment for the brand.
It's so incredible. Yeah. And even just like speaking on the brand, as someone that grew up an athlete, and obviously the last couple of years, I started running marathons. Diego over here, he's a professional bodybuilder. So I always try to stay active. And, as a consumer, like Hyperice, and I'm not just saying this because I love the products, but like you guys are the top of the pyramid, like the most incredible brand, not only in recovery, but all the things you mentioned. And when I received, I got the knee product that you guys have, and then the Venom 2 back recently. And I remember you saying on a different podcast, just the correlation between Hyperice and how you view Apple as a brand in the early days of being very product focused. Mm-hmm. Even just looking at the packaging here, right? Like this, I don't, these aren't just here to show the viewers, hey, check them out, but just to speak on them as well.
Yeah.
Like the packaging and opening it, the whole product experience as a consumer when I opened it, it feels not only inspired by Apple, but just very product first. And it's a phenomenal experience. Like talk to me about the brand correlation of how you view a company like Apple and how you've tried to incorporate some of that into the DNA of Hyperice.
Well, I mean, look, Apple, I would say Apple and Nike were my 2 biggest inspirations. And it's easy to sit here at someone who's maybe younger and saying, oh, well, yeah, well, you're just picking like the 2 biggest brands. But I'm not. I'm actually going back to when I was a kid in the 80s. My first computer I ever went on in school was a Mac. It was a Macintosh. And the reason why is because that was part of Apple's strategy in the 80s, was that they were big in education. And so I just, like, my first impression of what a computer was a Mac. And then at the same time in the 1980s, Nike was really establishing itself. They were sort of the counterculture brand, like
The underdogs.
Converse was bigger, Adidas was bigger, Reebok was bigger, but Nike was sort of, they brought so much culture into the brand. And like, when you're a kid, to be inspired by, you're very impressionable, right? And so, like, to see like these athletes and these storytelling moments around big moments where it was like, I remember like when Bo Jackson hit the home run in the All-Star game in 1989, and then like the Bo Knows commercial ran at a half inning. You're like, it just seemed like they had some magic to the brand.
Yep.
Apple sort of, when Jobs left in the late 80s, actually kind of went away for a long time. And for me, the inspiration was like Jobs coming back to Apple. And so the first computer I ever had that ever went on in like first grade was a Mac. Then when I went to college, the Mac, the bubble Mac, we called it, the iMac that was like different colors,
different colored ones.
That was the beginning of the Apple comeback, right? Because Jobs comes back in like 97, they launched that in 99. That's the year I went to college, and I needed a new computer.
99.
And I remember like, because it was like the time where everyone had started having their own computer, because that wasn't really common when I first started college, but when I went to school. And I just remember being like, man, like, it was so intuitive. I just plugged it in and plugged the Ethernet cable in. And I was like, wow. And like, internet was like relative more new back then.
Yeah.
And just how simple and intuitive all the products were. And then I watched Apple go on the most amazing like rise of all time, where it went iPod in 2001. And then, upgrading all the MacBooks and all the, the hardware, and then the iPhone in 2007, which changed the world, and the iPad after that. And so you're always influenced by the things that made a big impression on you. And for me, like, I would say like Nike from the athlete storytelling and and creating an aspirational brand around sport, which I loved, and I was an athlete. And then Apple around, as I was a little bit older and I could understand the world a little bit better, understand that Apple created a brand that created a language of which we all are now so used to. Like, products used to not have a language. They were just like, they weren't as well thought through. And like Jobs and Johnny Ive and the team at Apple, like, they elevated our sensibility about what a product is, how it should be presented, how it should be packaged. And I always say, in the history of the world, no one's ever said, oh, go get the product manual for the Apple product, right? Because you turn it on, it's intuitive. So we have, I would say, borrowed all of that philosophy from Apple on our products, as far as like, I want people to be able to get it and not have to open a manual. They should just be able to turn it on and figure it out. The design language should be simple, like the curves of certain shapes and the colorways and the way we use typography, like in our brand system. So it's all, good artists borrow, great artists steal. And I have no don't feel any shame in that. Like, every person that's making hardware in the world right now is borrowing or stealing from Apple. and not stealing intellectual property. I'm just saying the philosophy and the approach. Every brand needs an identity and their products have to have a language. And so we're really big on that.
Absolutely. I mean, and you can feel it and see it. So it's really cool to hear you speak on that. I know we're talking about the Olympics and, all the product lines you had today. I want to go back in time. I know we were touching on it momentarily, but bring us back to the early days of having this idea. I know there's a story where you were able to bring some of the early product ideations to Kobe Bryant, and you're really just getting a sense of like, hey, like, what is this product we're going to go build? What is this company we're going to go build? I know you've said, you had the furthest thing from business experience, as you mentioned, high school basketball coach, teacher. What was your mindset when starting the company, and how did you view this industry back then? Because obviously it's grown so much, and so much has changed since you started in 2010. So bring us back to that younger Anthony in terms of how you viewed the company and the culture of recovery, as you could call it, back then.
Yeah, I mean, so when I started, there was no recovery brand. That was just the whole concept. Like, when I started, everything was all geared around training. So Nike bought Spark in 2007, and they were running these campaigns on and everything was about training. If you wanted to like, you know, if you wanted to get better or if you wanted competitive advantage, it was all training. So there wasn't really a recovery industry. So it really was a personal thing for me. Like I, to this day, play basketball twice a week. I was playing at that time, and I came out of the 90s when like everything was like lifting and playing basketball. And so like those are two things that are really hard on your body. And when I hit about 30, 31 years old, my body just like started to get like, I started to get like lower back pain. I started I was a little bit sore after I played, and I'm like, gosh, this kind of sucks. Like I hope this is not going to be, you know, the rest of my life. And so I started to ask the question, like, how are these NBA players playing 82 games a year, and like, you know, like they must be doing something like different. Like, well, I wonder what, you know, is there any sort of like secret that they have? And so one of the things that was very noticeable is like, well, athletes ice, and that was like, you know, like like you'd always see it, like you'd watch ESPN and they would like show like NBA players after the games are all wearing like, you know, like ice bags strapped to them.
tape straps.
And I'm like, okay, well, icing, that like something I could start doing. And so I made, I didn't want to like, I didn't have plastic bags and all the wrap. I'm like, well, what if I could make like a reusable product? And at the time I was living in Australia, and my wife was playing professional basketball down there, and all the rugby players would use these like medical ice bags because they were reusable. And I'm like, oh, that's like, you know, just because they don't want to, like in America, we would just like fill a plastic bag, wrap it, throw it away, do it the next day. I'm like, so it's like, well, if you do it 100 times a year, you're throwing away, like you got 2 legs, you're doing 400 bags, you know, a year. And so I was like, well, what if I can come up with something that's like more reusable? So there was, you know, the medical ice bag. I'm like, what if I took that and if I compressed it with like neoprene, because neoprene, I grew up like wearing wetsuits in the wintertime, and like they like really compress to your body. So I'm like, I just came up with this art project to make knee icers, and I started just making it for myself. That's really what it was. It wasn't a business. It was just like my own art project.
And at the time, during this phase of more so discoverability, that's when you're working at, you know, your
I'm still a teacher.
This is something are you married at the time? Or
I am, and I was and I had come back from Australia waiting to go back to my teaching job, and so but I made these like sort of as an art project, and a friend of mine who was a guy that his name's Ryan Batticelli, he's a coach at San Diego State now. We coached together, and he had joined the UC Irvine staff, and that's where Kobe did all his workouts. And he was responsible for letting Kobe in the gym, putting him to do his workouts. And then I wore one of the places I used to play pickup basketball was UC Irvine.
Okay.
And so I wore I played my games, and after I put them on, and he goes, "Hey, where'd you get those?" I'm like, "Oh, I just made them." He goes,
Kobe says this too?
No. My friend Ryan, he goes, one of my jobs is I got to fill Kobe's ice bags every time, and I got to like tie him, and he wants them done a certain way, and I always mess it up. And he's like, could you like make me 2 of those? Those look really easy.
Wow.
And I'm like, yeah, sure. And so I just thought I was going to make them. So I went back to the wetsuit factory. That was like, this guy was completely annoyed that this like guy was going in there. Just like I was hand cutting, or he was hand cutting stuff for me. It was like, I was literally just paying him cash to like, just do me these like favors that were kind of more of a nuisance. And so I made 2 more, and I went to a sticker factory. I put his logos on them, and I thought I was just going to give it to him. And Ryan's like, hey, he's like, this is really weird because he never wants to meet anyone, but he wants you to give it to him because he wants you to explain it to him.
Wow.
So I went and
this is 2010.
This is August 1st, 2009.
2009.
And so, so his main feedback was, he goes, hey, I like this idea because I ice all the time and I'm constantly throwing bags away and stuff. He's like, I like this idea of having something that I could do all the time. And so he goes, let me use it for 2 weeks and I'll give you some feedback. So like 2 weeks later, sure enough, like I get a call. He's like, hey, he wants to see you again. And he gave me in-person feedback. And it was like,
wow,
okay, so this is what's wrong with it. He goes, I like that it gets really tight, but then after a while the air fills up and it slides down. So he's giving me all this stuff. And I'm like, he's giving me all this feedback as if I have like the capability to like make it any different, which I didn't.
Yeah. Even just to interject, right? A lot of young or even mature entrepreneurs are watching this show. When you're at this time of, you have this idea, you're in the presence of someone like Kobe Bryant.
Yeah.
What's your mind saying to yourself back then? Are you like, hey, wow, like I have, like, what is your mind saying in terms of, whoa, I need to go raise capital for this. This is product validation, or is it more just like, hey, taking it step by step?
I mean, I try to like block that out as far as like, I mean, you can't be around people like that and just be like, I always joke, like, I don't ask all the athletes I met over the years, I think I have like a picture with like 2 of them because I never ask. And like, you know, I try to, you know, if I'm going to be taken seriously, like I'm trying to enhance their craft.
Yep.
And I don't want, you know, I take the fan of me kind of goes away. Then like my knowledge of who they are in their sport and what the demands of the game are for them is important. But I try to like, not like I remember with Kobe, even though it was like, hey, I was meeting someone that I grew up a huge Laker fan and I had watched all of his games and we were about the same age, but I never wanted to make it where, I don't know, you kind of have to have a certain approach where like that you're gonna get their respect. And if you're too much of just like a fanboy, they're just gonna be like, it's just a turn off. So my thing was like, hey, I made this. I know you ice every day. And I think that this is a better way to do it. And I want to, and if there's ways you think I could make it better, let me know. So that was kind of my approach. And so he gave me this feedback and I was like, okay, I don't have the resources to do this on my own. So now I got to go find someone who can help me on the manufacturing side. Cause I could do like, I had a vision in my head of how I wanted it to be, but I needed the execution. And so I was able to find a partner, even though it was during the recession, because the 2009 recession was really bad. Cause everyone talks about the 2008 financial collapse, but the recession really that lasted all the way through 2009. So there wasn't a lot of people that were wanting to like take a phone call from a guy with no website, no history. But I was able to find someone who helped me source manufacturing. And basically what Kobe told me the second time was, he goes, hey, I like this idea, but it's like not a finished product. But if you can make what I'm telling you, if you can make the improvements, he's like you're 80% of the way there. If you can make these 20% refinements, I'll wear that like I would wear it. And so that is when I had the idea for like, well, maybe I could turn this into a business.
Yeah.
Because at first it wasn't a business. You know, that's kind of what the Kobe story was that it was him saying like validating that like, hey, I like your idea, but it just needs refinement. It needs to be like a real product, not an art project. And, but he's like, but if you get it there, like I'm in, you know, I'll wear it. Wow. And so that was sort of like, you know, it was sort of like, if you build it, he will come.
Yeah.
You know, and so that was sort of the challenge that we were faced with. And so that's what gave me the idea to be like, hey, I'm going to need to like start a business and it can't be just me.
Yeah. I mean, even just hearing that story is incredible. You know, Kobe Bryant's giving you product feedback, telling you, hey, if you build it, I will come for this and wear it. From that moment, you know, and one of my favorite books is Peter Thiel's 0 to 1, is like creating that real innovation progress within the business with an idea. When you take that step, and you know what I guess you could call, what entrepreneurs call that leap of faith. You jump off, you're growing your wings on the way down. What were some of the first courses of action that you took? Because you're in a business where, you know, in this modern age, there's so many different types of business you can start. You pick hardware. Obviously, you know, this is a hard business to get right. It takes a lot of capital, et cetera. So what were some of the early decisions you made, and when it comes to manufacturing, partners, investors, and how did you think about the business landscape at the beginning?
Well, you make decisions given the information you have available to you at the time. And I just didn't know anything at the time. So like I was as green as you could be. I mean, I came out of, you know, education where it's just not business. It's not transactional. Like there's no transactions really in education, you know? And so there's, I wasn't really that interested in business growing up. I didn't really like study like business models or anything like that. Like my interest in business more was in the arts of like branding and how brands are presented in photography. And, you know, like, you know, I said like growing up and like, I think I had an intuition for how brands communicated, but it really wasn't in the nuts and bolts of like manufacturing and like, you know, in the sort of the nuts and bolts of business. And so like, I didn't really I was literally going to have to learn on the fly essentially, because I had this big deficit of knowledge, but,
and you're solo founder.
Yeah.
So I mean, that also is a whole other just,
I didn't have
perspective.
I don't come from an entrepreneurial family. Like my dad worked for the same company for 35 years. He was an engineer and like was a company man, but like, no, don't really have you know, it's not like I grew up around it. I mean, I grew up around in my neighborhood, you know, like Jim Gennard founded Oakley out of my neighborhood.
Oh, wow.
You know? And so I grew up 2 streets away and used to see him in his garage making
so great
BMX grips. And
wow.
So it was around it, but I never, you know, I think a big moment in the culture for my generation, you know, I'm a Gen Xer, is like, if you would have thought like, oh, that person has their own business. Well, when I was growing up, that meant that they had like a physical brick and mortar store that they sold something at.
Yeah.
Or like, you know, like, oh, like, you know, the surf and skate industry was like central to like this area, right? So like, oh, that guy, you know, he started, you know, you always heard about the guys who started Volcom or the guys who started whatever.
Yep.
And so the thing that really changed that paradigm to me was when I was in college and all the kids were downloading Napster. And we heard about this guy. Wait, did you hear this was invented by a 19-year-old in his dorm room named Sean Parker. And I was thinking like, wow, like, but is it a bit like, it was free. Like, how does it even work? Like, is it a business? Like, just the idea that there could be entrepreneurs that like existed in this like digital paradigm.
Yeah.
And so it got this, it like, to me, like before there was Mark Zuckerberg, there was Sean Parker, and obviously they, you know, he's one of the co-founders of Facebook too, or sort of early in Facebook. But Zuckerberg was like the next, and then like you had like this whole generation of people that that grew up in a much different world to what an entrepreneur could be, because an entrepreneur used to be like, you go back to like in the 70s, like Steve Jobs starting Apple out of a garage.
Yeah.
And there's like a physical location in business, and like
Steve Wozniak just hacking away.
And so entrepreneurship has taken on a much different, like, you know, then you hear about people that, oh, this guy, you know, the kid that, you know, developed WhatsApp, I think maybe he's Austrian, or I can't remember where it was from.
Yeah,
but
even there's even something I told my buddy recently, the founder of Telegram. There's like a 30-person engineering team, and you know they have billions of users, and it's just you even see that with companies like X, right? In terms of like their downsizing team and like the efficiencies at place in this modern world. It's
so
it's a whole different area.
Yeah. So if you would have told, well, first of all, I don't even think I even knew what the word entrepreneur meant when I started Hyperice, and it was more like, hey, like I think that
trying to create a great product.
I was very influenced also, like, so like I always say like Nike and Apple, like philosophically, and but in that moment I remember Beats by Dre was really an emerging brand.
Yep.
And the whole idea of like they gave the headphones to the USA basketball team in 2008, and they got off the plane and they were wearing them, and everyone's like, whoa, what are these headphones? And so my thing was like, wait a minute, like all athletes ice, so I bet I can get all those guys on that team to wear if I can make it good enough to wear, and sure enough, even before we launched, I remember going to LeBron James's charity game and having LeBron and Dwayne Wade and all the guys that were on that, Kevin Durant, all those guys were given a set of the Hyperice. This is before we launched. This is 2011.
Wow.
And I remember like sitting there looking and going like, oh, wow, that was fast. Like I said that maybe someday all of them will wear it, and they're already wearing it. We haven't launched yet. So if you like, it's because the athletes wanted something that was new. And I think that athletes were always ahead of the game. They're shifting their mind to like, the way I enhance my craft is not by training harder and training more. It's by training smarter, but recovering more, taking better care of my body, looking for advantages in nutrition and sleep. So you're starting to see like what we call it, like cracking the code, right? Like, what's the code? Like, can you sleep better? Can you eat better? Can you hydrate better? Can you recover better? Can you massage better? So all these things kind of go into the final recipe of the athlete's craft.
Yep.
And so we were just occupying this real estate where I like just raised my head and said, hey, I think technology can influence can enhance the craft through recovery. And so like, that's kind of like the real estate that we occupy.
I love it. And even too, when you're saying that, I think I'm 24 for context, and I feel the last 5 years, especially having this podcast, like being able to interview people like yourself or the founder of Whoop or the founders of Plunge, sort of like these brands that, you know, a lot of them started off like you guys, like peak athletes only in terms of like recovery and taking care of yourself, and to see how that's translated to like the consumer and how they can take care of themselves the way peak athletes do, and how that translates to culture and sort of, you know, people wearing the Whoop and the heart rate monitors and the 8 Sleep. I just had one of the co-founders of 8 Sleep on, and I think it's not only very cool to see, but when I think about like the future of health, longevity, and the things that I just like reading about and studying, you know, you see people like Brian Johnson and these characters that are just like immersing themselves and documenting it. It's just,
is that the guy like Marina Del Rey or whatever?
Brian Johnson?
Yeah.
That's the guy that's doing like all the tests on his body.
Yeah.
Not a Braintree Venmo.
Yeah. Right, yeah.
But speaking on athletes, and something you mentioned earlier, something I'm very intrigued about, which is the Nike Hyperice collaboration, the shoe, the vest. I remember I saw this, And I'm just like, whoa, like, is this an AI image? What is this? Like, is this real?
That's a compliment for people that thought I got multiple texts that day or like, is this real?
Yeah. So for people that are watching, what is this incredible partnership and device that you guys created with Nike?
Yeah. So the Hyperice Nike project started, it's about 2 years ago. It really started of just like reimagining new ways where we could impact the athlete in multiple touch points throughout their day that would impact performance and longevity. And, people think that like we sit here and tinker and come up with technology and then put it into a project and then go to sales and marketing and figure out how to sell it. And like, that's actually the backwards way. The way we think of it in the way all products start is we think about the experience first. And so the experience started of like, how can I enhance the experience of the athlete, right? And so, so athletes need to, they need to properly warm up and prep their bodies for movement, not only for like performance reasons, but for injury prevention, right? So like that phase, like the movement prep phase is a huge priority for an athlete. Well, athletes also need to recover just from like the day-to-day like grind. Sometimes they need treatment. So they need like, if they have some sort of pain or tissue injury, they need to treat it. And then like all athletes travel. And I was like, well, we always have to be thinking about all those like touch points, right?
Yeah.
So what if there was sort of, I go back to like when Apple launched, you talked about Apple earlier, when like Steve Jobs launched the iPhone. If you go back to the keynote from January 2007, he doesn't just come out and say it. He says, hey, today Apple's launching 3 products. Mm-hmm. Apple's launching a new iPod that's got widescreen. We're launching a phone, and we're launching a computer. And he said, but we're actually not launching 3 products. We're launching 1 product. And that was sort of like the whole thing behind that, right?
Yeah.
So like when we launched the Nike shoe, I said, well, it's sort of the similar dynamic. It's like, what if there was a shoe that could help an athlete like warm up and put their body in the optimal state before they put their game shoe on? What if there was a shoe that could help an athlete like recover faster after a game? What if there was a shoe that an athlete could wear? Because we were at the Olympic trials, I'm like, every athlete got here via plane, right?
Yeah.
Well, we know what being on a plane does to our bodies. It makes our legs feel tired and dead. So like, what if we could reverse that? So what if we could make a travel shoe? And then what if we could make a treatment shoe? Because over a long enough timeline, people are always going to, eventually, unfortunately have some sort of, an injury or something. And, but what if we could do all that in one? What if we could do one shoe that could do all that? That could be the athlete's companion for that.
Wow.
And so, I mean, look, ideas come from places when you're thinking about experiences that you want to have. It's not always about solving a problem. Mm-hmm. Look, everyone says, oh, the best products are the ones that solve a problem. Yeah, but sometimes the best products are solving problems that you don't even realize are problems. It's just enhancing an experience and making, like, enhancing the quality of life of an athlete or a regular person. And so for us, it was just like, we wanted to bring our technology. We thought that we were at the point where the technology had gotten small enough, light enough, and efficient enough where it could disappear into something like a footwear or a piece of apparel. And so when it came to that, like, Nike was obviously going to be the first call we make because we have a long-standing partnership with them. I was close with the head of footwear innovation, and I was like, yeah, I think that we're not a footwear and apparel company. And like, I would make everyone raise their right hand. We're not going to ever become a shoe company, right? So we needed a partner to basically like, hey, how can we figure this out together? Because it was a moonshot project, right? It wasn't like, we didn't know 100%. We had our ideas and our sketches of like how we think it could work, but could we pull it off? Is there enough real estate in the shoe? Could we make it elegant? Like, it wasn't just about making it. It was about making it elegant enough to actually be a shoe and be wearable. It's kind of like when I tell people all the time, like, James Cameron had the idea for Avatar right after Titanic in like 1999, but he went to Industrial Light and Magic and they said, well, we can't really, this is not going to look how you want it to look. And so he had to wait until the technology caught up, and then they did it. And there's something about like waiting for the right moment to do it. And so I feel like the timing is right where we're like, hey, we've miniaturized all our technology. We think we could do this. And so the moment was right to do it.
That's incredible. So that product specifically, is that going to be direct to consumer, or who has that right now?
Well, right now, I mean, the way in True Hyperice and at Nike Fashion, we always do all of our product testing on athletes.
Yep.
And we have access to the world's best. And so there was this moment coming up, take the commercialization out of it. Like this moment was coming up where it was like, hey, the Olympics are in Paris in 24. And this was like kind of on the radar, middle of last year. They're like, hey, do we think we could do so? Could we finish this project and get enough done by then? And it gave us like a marker to hit, right? Yeah. And so we had made some big breakthroughs last June where we got everything on board, and we're like, hey, we think we could get there. So before this is going to go and ever become a commercialized product, we wanted to say, let's test it amongst the athletes that have the highest standards, that are really in tune with their body, that are going to use it at like the biggest moments.
Yep.
And we're going to get an unbelievable set of product feedback so that when we go from like this first production run, which we did, where there'll be several hundred athletes at the Olympics that'll be using the shoe and vest, and then the additional Nike wear testers that we're going to do at the end of the year. And we're going to have this amazing set of feedback from the fit, the feel, like temperatures, like the usability, all that, user interface. And we're going to be able to like refine that and put it into a commercial product at some point.
That's so sick. Congrats, by the way. I mean, just there's a quote, I'm going to butcher it, but it's from Ford. It's like if people asked for a faster car, they would have gotten another horse, like, or an extra horse, right? So hearing the parallels of like how you guys think about like seeing it and believing it and having that moonshot idea, it's really cool to hear.
Yeah, I mean, when if you want to be and I always feel like people throw around the word innovative so much, and I don't use the word that much because I don't think it's up to us to say that something's innovative. That's up to the audience. It's sort of like, people should not listen to, we make up our minds about product quality from our own experiences, not from marketing. So like whenever you hear like advertisers try to say, this is the best quality, or like they try to like preach, and I'm like, yeah, but I'm not going to make up my mind listening to an ad. I'm going to make up my mind on my actual experience using the product. People come up to me all the time. They're like, man, my Normatec, I want to get a new one, but man, my old one's like still like fine. I'm like, yeah, it'll last forever. That person is making up their mind about quality based on their own experience. Yeah. I feel like innovation is the same way. Like, don't let me tell you something's innovative. Innovation should be like, that's for the audience to decide that, hey, this actually made my life better. This enhanced some experience. And then it becomes innovative, but we just deal the cards. We're just the dealers. We say, here's our technology. And if you ask me, I believe it adds a ton of utility in my life, and I think the products are innovative. But that doesn't mean that it is. It's really what ultimately the market speaks.
Totally. Yeah. And I got to say, by the way, too, I got to start doing every interview in these booths. I'm just having the best time ever right now. But to kind of pivot to something I'm curious about in terms of like growth through acquisitions. I know you guys have done multiple acquisitions throughout the years, and I'm curious, like when you were going out to acquire a handful of companies, I know Normatec was one of them. I would love your the context on the other companies. How do you guys view acquisitions? How have you viewed them in the past, and then also looking into the future?
Well, Normatec was the first big one. We had acquired some intellectual property from a company that actually was the precursor to the Hypervolt. So like before the massage gun market even existed back, there was a company that was developing a precursor to a percussion device. And, we ended up buying that company and leveraging that into product development process that led to the Hypervolt in 2018. Yep. We were actually selling a plug-in massage device, percussion device before that, as early as 2014. And so in that instance, it was more like that was like an IP purchase. So like the consumer doesn't know about that. Yeah. But it was something that we did that really helped our product development, right? The Normatec was different because they actually had a really big cult following in 2019 when we started the negotiation. The cult following was really amongst professional and college athletes, like Olympic or high-performing athletes, I guess you could say, and then avid runners and cyclists like Ironman. But that was kind of, and then it had filtered a little bit into the entertainment community because the entertainment community follows the athlete community. But it was still pretty niche. And one of the challenges was that the price of an entry-level Normatec was like $1,600 at the time, which is sort of just like an odd kind of price point. It's not really a consumer price point. So, but I loved the product. I got the product in 2013 and loved it. And I felt that like a lot of the athletes that were using our products were using Normatec. And I was like, wow, like this seems to be like my own body like responded really well. And everyone I talked to was like, oh yeah, it's a really great product. I think that we just saw the opportunity that if it was in a bigger vehicle and our brand had kind of really excelled at like kind of like storytelling and really kind of owning the narrative about recovery and from like a sort of a storytelling and science perspective. And that wasn't the strength of Normatec. The strength was just it was a great product.
Yeah.
But it was weird because it wasn't really that much of a consumer facing brand because of the pricing dynamics. So the problem we solved was like, can we Apple Foxconn this and figure out a way to get the manufacturing, maintaining all the quality. We didn't change one critical component. We got the manufacturing down by half, and we were able to offer the product at $800. And that's when you see like the just Normatec really scale, right?
For sure.
And so, that was so those two acquisitions happened for completely different reasons. And then, there's a company called RecoverX that had a contrast therapy technology that we acquired, and then we used that to basically redesign our Venom line around. So if you think about the Nike shoe, the two core technologies are thermal technology because the shoe has heating elements, and then there's the Normatec technology in the shoe. Both of those are technologies that we acquired.
Wow.
So yeah, the acquisitions obviously like worked out from a perspective of like their individual successes, but also the cross-pollinating those technologies and then reimagining new categories of product to put them into.
It's so great. It's just operating better together, right?
Yeah.
Just company aside, product within an ecosystem. It's so cool to see.
Yeah.
When you think about like more so as a founder, like throughout the growth of Hyperice, I remember reading like 2020, Hypervolt takes off. You guys do north of $100 million that year, if I'm not mistaken. Through this hyper growth phase, like, how was your mindset and how are you viewing and handling this phase of growth? I mean, that's every founder's dream, right? The people that are getting their early stage feedback, whether that's their friend or Kobe Bryant, like you're putting in this effort to hopefully one day reach this phase of growth and then obviously to grow as a company into where you need to go. So for you as a founder, Anthony, talk us through that point of, 2020 moving into this year of hyper growth and really how you guys shifted things in the company, whether that's through capital, through key hires, et cetera.
Yeah. So it happens so fast. You don't really have a lot of time to like think about it's happening. Like I remember at the end of 2017, I remember in December, we broke the $10 million revenue mark where I think we did 10.6 million that year. And we were like celebrating. I'm like, wow, like that's a big milestone, this little startup. I think we were probably 10 people at the time or something like that. 10, 12 people. And, it was like, recovery was not mainstream yet. We were pretty early still, 2017. And then 2018, when we launched the Hypervolt, that was sort of just it's like a band that has like some successful albums, but all of a sudden like their third or fourth one is like breaks and they get really big.
Yeah.
And so the Hypervolt was really, it just hit the culture in a big way. And so we went from a company, doing, you talk about the 24 months from the end of 2017 to the end of 2019. Yeah, we grew like 15x, about 14x. So you're talking about like, it's a different, like your life's different, it's just like, wow, like everything's just, the type of problems that you have are different because there's always, business is constantly a series of problems that you're trying to solve and you make decisions to solve them. But it was, like, I don't think that like things are happening so fast and you're constantly like adapting and you're moving 100 miles an hour. So you don't really have a lot of time to like sit there and reflect. I was like, I'll think about that when, someday and, when this is all over. But, you're just, again, you're trying to learn as much as you can and make the best decisions every day. At the end of the day, we're paid to make decisions. We make decisions every day, little and big, about people and personnel and products and distribution and marketing. And, you end up, you're a sum of all those decisions. And so you try to make those decisions with as much clarity as possible, even though things are changing around you really fast. And that's kind of the hardest thing, is that, then in 2020, this black swan event happens, right?
Yeah.
You have this pandemic. And so, it's just, it's easier to run a business with clarity. And then like when things get really like, when you introduce a variable like that, it's like, oh, okay, well, like, where's the manual on how to survive a global pandemic in the 21st century? There is none, right? So it's all just like, you every day it's there's new challenges every day, and even in that like rocket ship growth we had, there was still like challenges and things that come up, and but you just kind of like have to make the best decisions you can.
Yeah, it's great to hear. And even to I want to hear, just in the context of you're working with so many elite athletes, you're someone that's obviously stays active. What is your daily routine as a CEO, but also as someone that's, trying to take care of himself, wants to be active, is looking to obviously incorporate, the products into your own life? What does your day typically look like?
Yeah. So I came up in the late, as a teenager in the 90s. And so like second half of the 90s is when like I really got into like working out, and like I would lift a lot, and like that lasted all the way through the early 2000s. Like, so there was like a good, like from like call like 95 to 2010, like those 15 years, that was like kind of like core, like whatever other sports I was doing, I was always doing that. And I think that like I just hit the wall where I was like, I freaking just don't want to be inside lifting heavy metal objects anymore. So I look for other things to do. But basketball has kind of been the constant. I never really stopped playing, played in high school and never stopped playing after that. But there's been like times where I got really into tennis, and there's been times, and like I live on the ocean, so like I've always been to like like swimming in the ocean, or whether it's like occasionally going out for surf or whatever it is. But it's more like I love moving, and the competition and basketball is just the one thing that has I think I have a crave of like competition, and that's both physical and like kind of like it also is like a measuring stick for like, how young am I? How good do I feel? And where am I at? Right? Basketball challenges all that. It challenges like the physical. It challenges like the mental and like your dexterity, coordination. And so for me, like that's just the ultimate workout. So I play 2 days a week. And so all my recovery and everything revolves around those 2 days.
Got it.
Recently, like in my community, everyone plays beach volleyball, and like my wife's got really into it. And so I'll kind of go bang the ball around a little bit. And I don't know if I'll ever take it more seriously, but to me,
I was playing a big beach volleyball game, or like kind of like lakefront in Michigan on the 4th of July.
Yeah.
Got so intense. I was telling Diego, I'm trying to get out there more.
Yeah.
In Santa Monica.
So, I mean, I think that when you're a competitive person, you said that like, my wife played for basketball, never played volleyball, and then now she's like super into it. But I just love basketball too much. So it's still to me the one thing that it pushes me, it challenges me, and it gives me that like reason to like keep my body in shape. And, but I do think that like, I think I'm going to have a moment where I go back to like my roots and start doing more strength training. Cause as I'm on the wrong side of 40 now. So you got like strength training and like is like something I got to get back into. And, I just like that'll eventually be part of it. So the stuff I do for recovery is just going to even be more important, and it's such a part of my life that I don't really think about it anymore.
Yeah. Do you guys work with any runners or marathoners?
Yeah, that's not the division I like. That's not where my relationships lie. So that's really more. I do USA Track and Field's a partner of Hyperice, and then Legacy Normatec, when they were coming up, that was a big community that they were really popular in. Yeah. So like there's the marketing team that handles like those type of channels are we work with a ton of runners, and I'm more of like I follow track and field, and I'm like the sprints and sort of the more high profile events.
For sure.
But like, when you're a basketball player, you wouldn't be caught dead doing distance running. It's just like how it is. Yeah. So I, other than like, I know some, working with Nike, they've been really big and, obviously in running, and we hear the names a lot. So like, I know like Eliud Kipchoge was like one of the first to get the shoe, and like, and then Sha'Carri Richardson, who's a sprinter, So yeah, like I'd say like I'm literate in track and field, but like distance running, I just you know, basketball is my high intense workout, so I won't be doing that anytime soon.
I caught the bug like 2 years ago. I ran my first marathon, and first one was in Honolulu, and then last year was Palm Beach, and I've sort of set out on this path. The next 6 years, I want to do all 6 of the majors. So this year I'm doing New York City, and then it's Boston, Chicago, London, Berlin, Tokyo. And for me, it's just something that more than the day itself of the marathon, I mean, I'm sure you would agree, it's just the process of, for 4 months of the year, the way I'm training, the way I'm living, it puts me in a whole different state, and I love that process. But I mean, I deal with a lot of injuries from it, like my knee, I'm kind of like ramping up into it. I'm like, all right, people say you just get injured, and I think that's very true.
Well, it's good that
I'm doing my best.
It's good that people all have different things they love to do, because like for me, like running a marathon just feels like voluntarily suffering. So I want no part of it. But I know a lot of people are like, oh my God, you play basketball, doesn't your body hurt? I'm like, no, it's, you know, so like we all have to, like, I don't have really much interest in golf either, and a lot of my friends play, and I'm like, no, I'm good. Like I just don't want to spend 6 hours walking around. And so for me, like,
meanwhile, I just got a whole new set of clubs this week.
My thing is like, I love it. I think it's great that we all have different things, because otherwise, you know, if everyone loved golf, well, everyone would be on the course and you wouldn't be able to play. So I'm glad that we all have, there's a million things to do, and people that like, I remember when CrossFit got big, I was like, this just looks like punishment to me.
No,
CrossFit.
Oh, CrossFit. Yeah.
But look, I guess whatever makes people, you know, whatever does it for them, I'm all for it. We're an agnostic brand when it comes to what sport. We all have our own personal biases, but whatever you love to do, you know, we'll help you do it.
I love it. No, I love it. A couple more questions for you. Let's start to wrap up here, Anthony. When it comes to the culture here at Hyperice, I know we're here in the HQ. What are some key things that stand out to you when it comes to the culture you want to instill into the team here at Hyperice?
Yeah. Well, number one, I feel like as a founder, your sort of personality and approach, like definitely like has a trickle down effect. And, I think it starts for me, like people ask me all the time, they're like, oh, you know, what qualities as a founder do you think, you know, contribute to this? And like, for me, like number one is like, just like being kind. Like, I just think that like the lost art of kindness, I think one thing about me, I have, you know, if you're gonna tell your listeners, you cannot follow me on social media. I have no social media. I'm not on LinkedIn. I have not.
Yeah, I couldn't find you.
I don't participate in the social media culture. I actually think it's destroying the culture, but that's another podcast. So, and I feel like that culture has bred this whole new, like, just meanness in people. And it's just like the keyboard cowards, right? Yeah. It's just like, you know, and because. And so for me, like,
has that, I'm just curious on the note of social media in this world of like founder led brand, you know, people like Elon, you see these characters obviously on social. Has there ever been a temptation there of like, hey, like obviously you do podcasts, you're telling your story, so you're amplified on social across different channels. Or has it always just been like a non-starter?
I want to spend all my time living in the physical reality and be present. And
I love
when I'm home, I want to be around my kids. I want to go do stuff. Like, I really don't care about creating another personality, another life in the digital world, because my physical reality is like pretty good and I like it here.
I love that.
And I don't need to, and like, it doesn't validate. I don't feel any need to validate or connect. Like, I always tell people, I call you or I text you because like, that's how I have to keep in touch with you. I don't know when your kid graduates college or when you announce that you're pregnant or whatever, like, cause like a lot of times I remember calling a good friend of mine who's an athlete. I'm like, wait, I found out you're pregnant. You didn't tell me? She goes, well, yeah, because everyone knows it because I posted it. But if you're not on, like, so I'm like the last to know a lot about stuff. So most of my friends know that. They send me like, you know, stuff that like, if it's, you know, whether it's stuff, news that breaks or whatever. And look, yeah, there's probably some utility to it. Like, you know, if you're a big sports fan, you want to find out if your team made a big trade or whatever. But it's just not worth it to me to like that. The benefit, me finding out something a couple minutes later is not a big enough downside to make up for when I just go out and to dinner and I see people like they're at dinner with each other staring at their phones. I grew up in the time where that wasn't a thing, so I don't want, like, I feel like I'm like the get off my lawn guy, you know, like sounding like this old, but I just don't. For me, it's just not like that's just my choice. I don't look look down on it. I have my own opinions about it. But so going back to like the culture, like at Hyperice, by the way, everyone here has social media but me. But like kindness, like I spend just as much time talking to like, it's whoever, I interact with, regardless of if they're like, an entry-level employee or an executive and stuff, like, you got to value everyone. It's like, absolutely. I take a lot from basketball. Like the guy who's the 12th player on the end of your bench, like that guy matters because like they're on the team and like they're part of the chemistry. Right. Mm-hmm. And so if everyone feels they contribute and they're valued, it's just a better culture. So look, again, I never feel it's my right to say we have a great culture. You have to ask the people that work here. Just like I don't feel like it's all right to say we make really innovative products or we make really quality products. That's for the consumer side. But I think if you ask the people here, I would hope that like they would say that like it's a place that fosters, creativity and a good place to come to work every day.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I got to say the social media comment, it's so refreshing to hear. And I hope people watching or listening take that and really take a moment, because I know I will, to say like, hey, there's someone else that lives and breathes that. Like I feel like you feel so, you kind of have to keep up with the social or the next platform, the next thing, especially as founders are kind of like following attention and say, how do we create this with our brand? So appreciate you sharing that.
And then all this is privacy too. Like I just don't want everyone knowing everything I do. Like that's why, like, it's just what I'm eating, where I'm at. It just feels weird. Like I see people just like constantly broadcasting their life, and I don't know. It's just, I just don't. I love it. I'm happy to go about my day and just kind of live in the moment.
Yeah, you have a great life.
Yeah.
When you think about the future of Hyperice, I know we talk about the Nike product, the brands, the collaborations. Like you guys are at like a category. You guys are the category defining brand. As the founder, when you think about the future, like what excites you the most, and how do you think about Hyperice over the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I think about that we've reinvented the company like 5 times. So it's like we started out making portable ice compression devices that were non-electronic. And so then we invented the company that way, then reinvented the company with the Viper, which is our first electronics product. And doing a dynamic soft tissue product was one of the first of its kind. And that took the company a different direction. Then we reinvented again, but we introduced the percussion device to the world, laymanly referred to as a massage gun. And then we're like, hey, we thought that dynamic air compression was like a huge thing in the future. We purchased Normatec, we reinvented the company again. And then like now this is like, the 5th turn, right, of like, putting our tech into footwear and apparel. And so I remember when I had the Viper, we launched it. It won product of the year in men's fitness and men's journal, I think it was. And, we got a lot of accolades. And I remember, I don't care about that. I was just making the point that I remember thinking like that was validation for like, wow, like this was a really good idea.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, this might be the best idea I'll ever have. And it turned out that you can never think like that.
Yeah.
And I remember being at lunch with an athlete and he's like, this isn't your best idea. He's like, you haven't even thought of your best idea yet. And I remember saying like, that's a really good way to look at it. And so when you say what's the future, the known unknown is the most exciting part. Is like, well, I could tell the near future because I know all the products that we have in development. I get that.
Yeah.
5-10 years, like I always operate that like I'm right on the verge of like something can happen. A young entrepreneur in his garage might be working on something amazing and they get a meeting here and that becomes our next thing.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's, maybe it's someone internally, or maybe it's, someone on my product team, or maybe it's me or whatever it is. But we always have to feel that like our best idea is like, around the corner. I do think the Nike shoe is pretty damn awesome.
I can't wait.
So like before we get on to the next one, like I want to really kind of execute that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think that like, look, I mean, shoes are a huge category. And I think that our technology in shoes, I think like that's just the first of what I think will be many versions.
I love that. Well, Anthony, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show today. I mean, doing, the interview in these Normatec boots Gotta say, the best experience.
Yeah, well, it's sitting's not great for the body, but when you're sitting in NormaTec, you get we did the lymphatic pump equivalent of probably running like a half a mile or a mile or something like that. So it's good.
I love it. And last but not least, before we wrap up, where's the best place for everyone to learn more about Hyperice, all the products you guys offer, and just stay connected overall?
Yeah, I mean, Hyperice.com or our YouTube channel has we do a series called Behind it's playing above your head right now. It's called Behind the Science. If people want to learn more about what our products do, I think we do a good job of kind of explaining hey, don't just use these products and just trust us. We'll explain the science to you in our Behind the Science series. And if you want to learn more about how the products are made and built, we have a Behind the Design, which goes through our philosophy on design, engineering, and building products. So I would say YouTube or the website, probably the best place for that.
Love it. Well, I'll be sure to link that down below. And once again, thank you so much for having us here today. Not only did I learn so much, but I'm a huge fan of the product, of the business you've built, and truly can't wait to see the next 5 to 10 years and what that looks like. So thanks again, Anthony.
Yeah, thanks for having me.